Hello.
Oh, hello, Walter Nichols.
Who is this?
I'm sorry, were you asleep?
I frequently am at 3 o'clock in the morning. Who is this?
You don't know me. I apologize for the time, but I was delivering a baby.
Delivering what?
A baby, a 6-pound girl. My wife called me at the hospital. She told me that the police were waiting at my home to arrest me.
Arrest you for what?
For performing an illegal abortion.
Well, are you guilty?
Look, I'm a doctor, an obstetrician.
Listen, Doc, I ask you, are you guilty?
Yes.
All right, where are you?
I'm in a phone booth at Olympic near Beverly.
All right, Doc, you stay right there. I make house calls.
Walt, this had better be good. I didn't get to bed till 2:30 this morning.
Don't give me any complaints. I got up at 3.
3? Why?
Pour yourself some coffee. We're going to discuss a taboo subject.
A taboo subject in this office?
That's right, religion. I haven't heard of either one of you attending Mass lately, but I assume you haven't left your church yet.
Are you putting us on?
No, I have to give a very worried man an answer. Will we or will we not defend him? I'd like to do it, but I'm just a backwoods country Protestant myself. If you two want to, why, we'll just pass it up.
Walt, what are you talking about?
His name's Blackburn. Dr. Philip Blackburn. He's been charged with performing an illegal abortion. And he's guilty.
And you want us to defend him?
Well, he needs help. And he's told me all the facts, and I think that he deserves help.
What makes you think we'll want to pass?
Well, if my memory isn't failing me, and I don't think it is, you've told me that you don't believe in abortion.
I don't.
All right. All right, I'll go along with you if you'd rather the firm didn't touch the case.
I don't believe in abortions, Walt, but maybe this man who needs help does.
Walt, in the words of Cardinal Spellman, and I quote, Catholics don't need the support of civil law to be faithful to their religious convictions, nor do they wish to impose their moral views by law on non-Catholics. How's that for an accurate quote?
Marvelous. Except it was Cardinal Cushing, not Spellman. I don't think he was talking about abortion specifically. But neither was Father Murray when he said the law is required to be tolerant of many evils which morality condemns. But I think it covers your question, doesn't it, Walt?
I think it does. Let's go talk to our client.
You know, we don't believe in murder either. But I seem to recall defending a few people accused of it.
Well said.
Thank you, Miss Copeland. You may inquire.
Miss Copeland, how long have you worked for the defendant, Dr. Philip Blackburn?
14 months, maybe 15.
Is he a considerate employer?
I haven't had any complaints.
You have no prejudice against him.
None.
But you reported him to the police. Why?
He broke the law.
How?
He performed an illegal abortion.
You couldn't possibly be mistaken.
No.
Miss Copeland, medical ethics put a great deal of weight on the confidential relationship between the doctor and patient. Isn't that true?
Yes.
That ethic includes nurses, too, doesn't it?
Objection, irrelevant.
Sustained.
Miss Copeland, you testified that you opened the door to Dr. Blackburn's office operating room and saw an abortion being performed. Is that true?
Yes.
Well, how did Dr. Blackburn react?
He snapped at me.
What did he snap at you?
He said, "Get out and close the door."
And you did immediately?
Yes.
You only observed him for a matter of seconds, yet you claim you couldn't possibly be mistaken. You can't be really that sure of all you saw, can you?
I know a D&C when I see one. I mean an abortion.
Mr. Cleary didn't ask you why you opened that door. Why did you?
I don't recall now.
Wasn't it to qualify yourself as a witness against your employer?
Objection. The witness said she didn't recall why.
Sustained.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
The witness may step down.
I call Mrs. Holly Griffin to the stand.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and be seated.
Holly Griffin.
Mrs. Griffin, on August 2nd last, did you voluntarily submit to an abortion?
Yes, I did.
Is the doctor who performed that abortion here in the courtroom?
Yes, sir.
Would you point him out, please? Let the record show that the witness pointed to the defendant, Dr. Philip Blackburn. Now, was this abortion performed in a hospital, having been passed by a hospital committee?
No, sir.
Mrs. Griffin, you saw 3 doctors beginning last June. Doctors Settelmeyer, Pittman, and Bowers, each several days apart, did you not?
Yes, sir.
Did you ask each of them in turn to perform an abortion?
Yes, sir.
And they each refused?
Yes, sir.
On the grounds that it would be illegal, that you didn't qualify under the law?
Objection. Let him ask the doctors that question, if he can get any of them to appear in this case.
Sustained. But no more side comments of that sort, please, Mr. Nichols.
Your witness, gentlemen.
Mrs. Griffin, do you regret having had the abortion you just testified about?
No.
No ill effects?
No.
Do you have any grudge against Dr. Blackburn?
No. I'm very grateful to him.
What did he charge you for his services?
$50. But he said, pay it when you can.
Mrs. Griffin, I'm puzzled that you're here today testifying against Dr. Blackburn. Are you here voluntarily or under subpoena?
Objection. Irrelevant.
I'll rephrase the question, Your Honor. Mrs. Griffin, tell the court how you happen to be here today.
I repeat the objection.
May I say a few words, Your Honor?
Yes, Mr. Nichols, if it's on the point.
This young woman is testifying against herself. I know neither Mr. Cleary nor the court would allow her to do that unless some kind of a deal has been made. Now, if a deal has been made, the question is most relevant.
Objection's overruled. You may answer the question, Mr. Griffin.
Mrs. Griffin, please tell us what led to your being a witness against a man to whom you feel very grateful.
Well, the police came. They told me that one of the doctor's nurses had reported what happened. That what I did was against the law. Abortions were illegal. I could be sent to prison for 2 to 5 years.
Did they also tell you that no woman has ever been prosecuted for submitting to an abortion in the history of this state?
No, sir, they didn't.
Did they advise you of your rights?
Later, someone did later.
And did they tell you that if you didn't testify, they would prosecute?
They said they would have to.
And then you finally made a full statement.
Yes, sir. They told me I broke the law. But nothing would happen to me if I told the truth. So I told what I did.
Your Honor, the people will stipulate under Section 1324 of the Penal Code that Mrs. Griffin was ordered to testify and was granted immunity.
Thank you, Mr. Cleary. I have no more questions.
Any redirect, Mr. Cleary?
Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Griffin, was any police officer at any time hostile or abusive to you?
No, sir. They were calm and polite.
Were they unfriendly?
No, sir. They acted friendly. Like they were there to help me. To keep me from going to jail.
And before you made any formal statement, you were advised of your rights, didn't you say that?
Yes, sir. A man read from a card about my rights.
And you understood what those rights were, didn't you?
No, sir. I didn't.
No more questions.
The witness may step down.
As an obstetrical member of your hospital staff, Dr. Blackburn has performed abortions there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do your records indicate that in the month of August last, Dr. Blackburn submitted the case of Mrs. Holly Griffin to your therapeutic abortion committee?
The records do not show that.
Thank you. And Mrs. Darrow?
In actual practice, Dr. Staley, about 90% of abortions are approved on psychiatric grounds, aren't they?
Yes?
Weren't there over 18,000 legal abortions in California in the past 12 months?
Yes.
Now, in the words of the statute, the mental illness must exist to the extent that the woman is dangerous to herself or to the person or property of others, or is in need of supervision or restraint, unquote. Now, doctor, do you honestly believe that that description fits 16,000 of the women who got legal abortions in California this past year?
Objection. The question is improper.
I'll withdraw the question. Dr. Staley, the law requires that a woman have an abortion in an accredited hospital. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And most accredited hospitals require or demand that the woman stay there at least one night.
Yes.
At a cost of $200 or $300, which doesn't even include the doctor's fee, isn't it so?
Yes.
Now, that's a totally unnecessary expense, isn't it? Because virtually all abortions performed in the first 12 weeks can be done safely in a simple 20-minute operation. Now, isn't that true?
Well, in most cases, yes.
Doctor, how long have you been practicing medicine?
11 years.
And your special field?
Obstetrics and gynecology.
You deliver babies.
I guess I do.
How many have you delivered?
1,720 births, 1,756 babies.
Well, I gather you've delivered a few twins.
And one set of triplets, yes.
Before California passed its therapeutic abortion law, had you ever performed an abortion?
No.
What about after the law was passed?
I've performed 19 abortions under the law.
Will you tell the jury how you came to perform an abortion on Mrs. Griffin?
Well, I thought she came to me for obstetric care. I examined her. I found her healthy and pregnant in her 9th or 10th week. I was about to set her next appointment.
I don't want an appointment, doctor. I want an abortion.
An abortion? I'm afraid you don't qualify under the law, Mrs. Griffin, unless there's some psychiatric history you haven't told me about here.
No, I'm not sick. I'm just pregnant. My husband and I can't have any more kids. We can't afford to.
What does your husband do, Mrs. Griffin?
He's got no trade. But he works. We're not on the county.
What's his annual income?
Annual? I don't know. He earns about $50 a week. Maybe 75 when he's lucky.
Do you know the annual income the Bureau of Census says is the poverty level in this country, Doctor?
Objection. The question is not relevant.
The question is relevant, Your Honor. The defendant knows that $3,000 a year for a family of 5 is below the poverty level, and it influenced the doctor's decision.
The question is not relevant to this trial. Objection sustained.
Am I the first doctor you've come to about this abortion?
No. You're the fourth.
What did the others tell you?
That they couldn't say that it would hurt my health to have another baby. And I'd have to see a psychiatrist and have him say that having a baby would, I don't know, it might do something to my mind or something.
And did you consider seeing a psychiatrist?
I asked questions and found out how much they cost. That's all.
Well, I'm sorry, Mrs. Griffin. I'd like to be able to help you, but I'm afraid I can't.
Sorry I took up so much of your time. Got an office full out there. Wait.
Mrs. Griffin, what will you do now? See another obstetrician?
No. Guess I used up all the time I got for that. I have a friend who was operated on in Tijuana. She came out okay.
Was she operated on by a physician?
I don't know. But she came out okay.
So that's when you decided to help her.
No, I thought about it for the rest of that day and most of the night. And I telephoned her at 7 o'clock the next morning and told her to come see me in my office.
Why did you make that decision?
Because I'm a doctor.
But wasn't there one particular reason? I remind you of what Mrs. Griffin said as she was leaving.
Oh, Tijuana. Yes, I'd say that was the strongest reason.
Have you direct knowledge, Doctor, of how abortions are performed there?
Yes, I have. An unprofessional abortion in Tijuana involves a high medical risk. But then so does an abortion performed in this country if it's done by a non-physician.
Thank you, Doctor. Your witness, Mr. Clary?
Doctor, did you perform an abortion on Mrs. Griffin?
Yes, I did.
And you knew at the time, when you were performing that abortion, that you were committing a crime, didn't you?
Objection. The defendant has pleaded not guilty. It is the purpose of this trial to discover the answer to the prosecutor's question.
Defendant wasn't required to testify. You put him on the stand. However, Mr. Cleary, I'd like you to rephrase that question.
You knew at the time you were in violation of the law, didn't you?
I knew I was doing what I had to as a doctor, yes.
You're not answering the question. You are acquainted, aren't you, with the various steps you must take to be in conformity with the California therapeutic abortion law?
Yes, of course I am.
And did you take those steps?
No, I did not.
Because Mrs. Griffin didn't qualify, did she?
Any woman can qualify if she can afford it.
Your Honor, I move that answer be stricken from the record.
No evidence has been presented here that bears out that response. Dr. Blackburn, you must confine your responses to the questions asked. The jury will disregard that last statement. It'll be stricken from the record.
No more questions.
You may step down, Dr. Blackburn.
State your name and be seated.
George P. Sharp.
Mr. Sharp, are you a family man?
Yes, 2 boys and a girl.
Are you planning to have more?
No, we decided that was it.
But you can't be that sure, can you, that that's it?
Oh, yes, I can. Absolutely sure.
How?
I submitted myself to a surgical operation called a vasectomy.
Just
in
a
which,
moment.
the doctor...
Your Honor, it is obvious that this witness is about to testify to something which is totally irrelevant to this trial and along lines which should not be discussed in the presence of the jury.
Will you approach the bench, please, gentlemen? What purpose do you expect this witness to serve, Mr. Nichols?
Well, the defense contends that the law which brought this defendant into court is discriminatory. It discriminates, for one, against women. I'm making an offer now to prove it with this witness.
It isn't the jury's function to consider that kind of argument. You know that, Mr. Nichols. The law isn't on trial here. Your client is.
Well, Your Honor, to protect the record for a possible appeal, I'd like to make an offer of proof.
Proceed.
Well, if this witness is allowed to testify, Your Honor, he will state that when he and his wife decided their family was large enough, the precise size, incidentally, that Mrs. Griffith decided on, this witness merely went to a clinic here in the city and submitted to an operation that cost him $50. And it rendered him sterile until such time as he may want more children.
Any comment, Mr. Cleary?
There's a very big difference here. A vasectomy does not destroy a living organism. A fetus is a human being in an early stage of development. An abortion destroys that potential human being.
The Supreme Court of this state has ruled that no destruction of life takes place in any abortion unless the fetus is capable of existing on its own. In other words, in about 7 months of development.
All right, Mr. Nichols, your offer of proof is noted. But I am going to sustain Mr. Cleary's objection.
State your name and be seated.
Mrs. Leslie Seiden.
Seiden. Do you know the defendant?
Yes, he delivered both my children.
Were you also his patient once for an abortion?
No, I once asked him to perform an abortion, but he refused.
Objection, Your Honor. Once again, the defense seems to be trying to sneak in testimony which has no relevance to this trial.
The relevance was about to be made clear, Your Honor.
Well, I'm sure it was, but I think I'd better hear it first. Gentlemen. All right, Mr. Nichols. For purposes of possible appeal, what did you hope to establish this time?
Well, I'd like to offer proof that California's abortion law discriminates not only against women, but against the poor. If this witness is allowed to testify, we will learn that when Dr. Blackburn refused her an abortion, she discovered that she didn't have time to get a psychiatrist's letter and then wait for a hospital's committee to act. So she merely flew to Europe and had a legal abortion in a first-class hospital, an option open to any American woman, unless she happens to be the average American woman like Mrs. Griffin, who can't afford to fly to San Diego, let alone Europe or New York.
Any comment, Mr. Cleary?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Nichols. Your argument is on the record. Your witness will not be heard.
Prosecutors and judges are stuck with bad laws. They have no choice. But a jury can reject a bad law. That's the kind of case this is.
This is a very ordinary, very average jury we wound up with. You'd lose both ways.
So I lose. At least we can't hurt Dr. Blackburn if I try. He wants to practice medicine, not law. Abortion laws are being challenged from here to Washington by people who want to. Now, he came to us because we have a reputation for getting our clients acquitted. I think we owe him that shot.
Boy, you haven't heard a word that we...
Oh, settle down, boy. This argument's been going on for 200 years. You're not going to settle it tonight. My opinion is that there's no way to get the message to the jury, not past old Judge Cantlin. So why quarrel about it?
Because I think I can get it to the jury. And I would like your approval to try. Now, look, Brian, no lawyer who believes in jury nullification is saying we should give free rein to juries to create new laws. We're just saying that juries have the power in regard to one set of facts in one courtroom to refuse to apply a law to one defendant.
Quoting my old friend Oliver Wendell Holmes, the jury has the power to bring in a verdict in the teeth of both the law and the facts. But American judges usually manage to keep that fact from the jury. Now, how do you plan to lick that problem?
I'll get as much in as I can in my summation, and
Which will be about 5 words past nothing.
maybe. And if I have to, I'll risk a contempt citation to get in a little more. Or does that offend your sense of legal ethics, too?
To quote my father and yours, any lawyer who fails in his duty to his client out of fear of
Offending the judge offends his profession.
Yeah, right. But the whole idea of jury nullification offends the profession, too. But, all right, I won't say any more. If Walt is willing to go along, okay. It's your decision. And your hide.
And what makes it worse, although the defendant refused to admit it, the evidence makes it clear beyond any reasonable doubt that this defendant knew he was in open and arrogant violation of the law. Now, are some people above the law? Are doctors, for instance, above the law? Ladies and gentlemen, it will be your responsibility and your duty to answer that question with a verdict of guilty. Now, I've taken a great deal of time here, more than I ever intended. But before I close, I want to make reference to something I had not intended to bring into this trial. The defense has forced me to do so by their actions. They introduced a witness whom His Honor Judge Scanlon decided should not be heard. Not, however, before he had stated in your hearing that he had fixed the size of his family at 3 children by submitting to an operation, a vasectomy. Now, ladies and gentlemen, a vasectomy prevents conception. It is not an abortion. A vasectomy does not kill a living human being.
Objection, Your Honor. The courts of California have declared that an embryo is not a living human being.
Sustained.
No one can deny that an embryo, unaborted, becomes a living, breathing, soul-possessed human being. And you and I all know that our legislators had that in mind and in heart when they passed the law this defendant so arrogantly violated. Thank you.
Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I wasn't prepared for the prosecutor's final words. This trial has been admirably free of arguments relating to religious considerations, which have no place in a criminal trial in this country. A country where every man grants to every other man the inviolate right to his own religious beliefs. Now, it is my belief that law should treat the protection of life as a non-negotiable item. Now, a law that forbids all abortions puts the state in the role of recognizing the inviolability of every human or potentially human life. But the state has not done that. It has passed a law that decrees that some unborn children have rights and others do not. A law in which allowed nearly 20,000 legal abortions in the last 12 months. Now, the defendant's beliefs are not the same as mine, but I'm here defending him today. And you're sitting in judgment upon him as Americans with varying religious beliefs, united in our commitment to equal protection of the laws. The defendant, Dr. Blackburn, testified that Mrs. Griffin, his patient, could not qualify for an abortion under California law, and that she intended to have the abortion no matter what Dr. Blackburn chose to do. How? By going to an abortion mill in Tijuana. Now, the prosecution made no attempt to refute Dr. Blackburn's testimony that an abortion in Tijuana constituted an immediate and a serious threat to his patient's health, even to her life. Now, as a doctor, he felt he could not ignore that danger. And as a doctor, he felt he had no right to ignore it. Dr. Blackburn has not denied performing this abortion. He simply refused to concede that he knowingly committed a crime, and rightly so. Whether or not Dr. Blackburn is guilty of the commission of a crime is for you and only you to decide. Now, who is the complainant here? The state of California is the complainant. You must now ask yourselves, how was the state damaged? The state of California has great power. It has the power to bring the defendant here and force him to stand trial. It can order all of you to come and sit here as jurors. It can order you into the jury room to deliberate, but it cannot tell you what to do when you get there. That is a matter between you and your conscience. And it cannot dispute your decision once you have made it. A decision that the state has or has not proved its case against Dr. Blackburn beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. Now, before you retire to deliberate, Judge Scanlon will instruct you as to the law. It would be incorrect to conclude from his instructions that your discretion in this case is limited, that you are forced.
Mr. Darrell, you will refrain from any further discussion about my instructions or how the jury is to interpret them.
Yes, Your Honor. Let me conclude by suggesting that you ask yourselves this question. Is Dr. Blackburn a criminal? And should he be labeled as such and face a possible prison sentence? And finally, you should not ask yourselves whether it is right for the state to lose this case, because the state always wins when justice is done. Thank you.
Final word is yours, Mr. Cleary. You have anything to say in rebuttal?
Yes, I do, Your Honor. I shall be as brief now as I was lengthy earlier. How is the state of California damaged? In other words, who are the victims of Philip Blackburn's criminal act? I will be happy to answer that question. An unborn child was the victim, along with the people of this state. One of this state's laws, only recently passed, after much careful and conscientious consideration, was violated. Now, any state that stands back and ignores or accepts flagrant and open abuse of its laws is inviting anarchy. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't have to assess for you the terrible damage inherent in that. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it becomes my duty as judge to instruct you in the law applicable to this case, and it is your duty as jurors to follow the law as I shall state it to you. The function of the jury is to try the issues of fact that are...
Your Honor. Please forgive me for interrupting. But in a case of this kind, the jury has the right to consider more than the facts. The jury also has the right to consider the law
and
whether or not
Mr.
the
Darrell,
law
sit down.
community.
Sit down. Sit down, Mr. Darrell. Sit down. Bailiff, remove the jury from the courtroom. Jurors, please remember my earlier admonition not to discuss this case among yourselves or with anyone else. Mr. Darrell, stand up. I am inclined to hold you in contempt of court. You had ample opportunity to register your objections when we discussed my instructions in chambers.
I apologize for not doing so then, Your Honor, but my colleagues were opposed to my argument. And I hadn't then decided that I must argue the jury's right to judge the law as well as the facts.
Very well, Mr. Darrell. I hear what you have to say.
Thank you. Your Honor, I'm aware that the instructions you were giving the jury are standard in all California criminal cases, but they are misleading as to the actual rights and powers of the jury. A jury's right to mitigate existing laws was upheld by all the founding fathers of our nation. John Adams said in 1771 that it is the jury's duty to find the verdict according to its own best judgment and conscience, though in direct opposition to the court. The first Chief Justice of the United States, John Jay, recognized the need to tell a jury that it had the power to ignore judicial instructions. And in 1969, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit held that the constitutional guarantees of due process and trial by jury require that a criminal defendant be afforded the full protection of a jury, unfettered directly or indirectly.
Mr. Darrell, are you claiming that the Court of Appeals of the First Circuit held that a jury should be told it has the power to nullify the law?
No, Your Honor. I'm simply claiming that the decision means that a trial judge should not tell a jury they are powerless to bring in a decision in keeping with their own sense of justice and conscience. It is not the jury's duty to follow the law as it is stated to them. It is far more in keeping with American tradition that they be told they have the final authority to decide whether or not to apply a given law to the acts of the defendant. And I believe this case especially calls for that kind of instruction. And I humbly request that this jury be informed that nothing bars them from acquitting the defendant if they feel that applying the law would lead to an unjust result.
The Supreme Court decision of Sparf and Hansen has been the clear-cut, unchallenged law of jury nullification since 1895. No court since then has seen fit to question or ignore that decision, and it will not be ignored or questioned by me. Bailiff, will you return the jury? Your request is denied, Mr. Darrell. Sit down. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said a few moments ago, My duty is to instruct you as to the law applicable to this case. It is your duty as jurors to follow the law as I shall state it to you. Questions of fact are the province of the jury. Questions of law are the province of the court to decide. That is the universal law of the land.
Your Honor, please forgive me for interrupting you again, but that is not the universal law of the land. The Constitution of the state of Maryland reads,
Mr. Darrell.
The trial of criminal cases, the jury shall be
down.
the judge of the law as
Sit
well as
down.
the facts.
Mr. Darrell. Mr. Darrell, sit down or I will have you removed from the court.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will pay no attention to the statements made by Mr. Darrell. That outburst was out of order. It is also invalid as to the law. The United States Supreme Court decided over 75 years ago that juries do not have the moral right to decide the law according to their own notions or pleasures. The function of the jury is to decide and try the issues of fact. All of you agreed upon a verdict. You will have it signed and dated, given to the foreman. You will then return with it to this room. Bailiff? Stand up, Mr. Darrell. It is extremely rare that a judge's instructions to a jury are interrupted. When it has occurred, it has usually been dealt with severely. You, Mr. Darrell, committed this offense not once, but twice while making statements to the jury that you knew I did not want them to hear. I find you in contempt of court on 2 counts. The first, I will fine you $1,000. Because you disregarded my warning, on the second, I fine you $2,000. You will have 72 hours to raise the money. This court is adjourned.
Well, you obviously got your message over to them, Neil. They've now set some kind of a record for a case of this kind.
It'll make you feel any easier. You did a good job, especially with Judge Scanlon. You always had me agreeing with you.
Thanks. Won't you get it?
Hello? All right. Thanks. No verdict. Retired for the night.
Hello? Any word? Oh, hi. No, not yet. Where are you?
Well, I'm in a phone booth, looking at the Hall of Justice. I guess I just wanted to make sure it was still there.
Is it?
Well, I think it's leaning a little.
By the way, I've been meaning to ask you, have you got $3,000?
I was planning to borrow it from you.
I was counting on that. Listen, you better get back over here. Or at least go... Hold on, Neil.
Yeah? Oh, fine, thanks. Tell him better get a move on. We got a verdict.
See you in court, pal. Jury's in.
Will the foreman of the jury please hand the verdict to the clerk? Will the defendant please rise and face the jury?
We, the jury, find the defendant, Philip Blackburn, not guilty.
I can't believe it. Where? Oh, I can't believe it.
say.
Not at all, no. It's that young legal Lochinvar over there.
Clear. 1L10, Roger. 6A11, 6A11, ambulance injury, 1750 Sycamore, code 2. 7X8, clear.
Okay, now we don't want to trigger a riot. Be on your toes, but keep your cool. Don't provoke anything. Don't do anything that can be misunderstood. All our warrant specifies is illegal weapons and drugs. And that's all we're looking for and all we can legally confiscate, no matter what else we find. Okay? Any questions?
No, sir.
Okay.
Open the door, we're police. Open the door, we have a search warrant.
He's dead.
Don't move.
I'm clean.
All right, turn around.
district attorney's office said they tried for murder in the first degree. But my boy didn't do it.
You seem very sure of that, Mr. Miller.
I am. My wife died when Kenneth was only 9 years old. I raised him.
More coffee, Mr. Miller?
Thank you. I took him out of the ghetto. Why in God's name he went back? But that's not important. The important thing is that he is innocent.
Mr. Miller, the police seem to have a strong circumstantial case, unless you know of any witnesses the newspapers hadn't mentioned.
I only know this. He didn't do it.
Mr. Miller, your son was arrested at Black Panther headquarters. Is he a member of the Black Panthers?
Yes, but that doesn't make him a killer.
No, but it could make our case 100% harder.
And you mean you represent my son? Well, it's not a charity case. I can afford to pay your fees.
We're not questioning that, Mr. Miller.
I'm personnel manager at Pacific Aerospace Corporation. If you'd like a retainer, I'll be happy to...
Mr. Miller, is your son a minor?
No, he's 24.
Well, then he'll have to retain us. Have you discussed this with him?
No. He doesn't see me anymore or talk to me. He just despises me.
The whole case is still built on circumstantial evidence, no matter how you look at it.
Well, he's got his point of view.
He's a little hard-nosed about himself.
Yeah.
Well,
Your attorneys, Miller.
Mr. Miller, I'm Walt Nichols, and this is Brian Neil Darrow.
My attorneys, huh? Man, that is a sure enough embarrassment of riches. Let me guess. You've been retained by that righteous personnel manager of Pacific Aerospace Corporation to...
Yes, your father arranged for this meeting. Do you have any objections to us, Mr. Miller?
Walter, I'm delighted. Sit down. You too, Brian. Neil, don't be embarrassed. Did he give you his card? Of course he did. He has to. That's what he is. One neatly engraved card. A little black and a lot of empty white.
He mentioned you despise him.
No, man, he's my dear old daddy. And the only black executive level dude in his company. By requirement of federal contract. Or as we call it, a government-issued house nigger.
We don't really care that much about your family feuds. You're in here on a charge of murder.
I guess that.
do you want us to handle your defense?
Why do I need a defense? A pig is dead. Maybe he fell over his own feet, or maybe somebody else vamped on him. But I wasn't even out there. I shouldn't even be under arrest.
2 police witnesses place you outside on the porch that Sergeant Wilkerson fell from, or was thrown from.
Well, sure. I got there 2 seconds before they did.
So he'd already fallen.
That's right. I heard a shot, I ran out, and there he was, sprawled out in the hood of that car. It was his own gun that went off. Or maybe he was just nervous. After all, they were making a raid. That's just pig talk for killing off a few Panthers. Like Fred Hampton in Chicago, murdered in his bed. 89 bullets fired by pigs. Except this once. One of them gets himself killed. Not by me. Maybe the CIA did it to frame the Panthers, to make an excuse for a roundup all over the city.
Use that for a defense, you'll nail yourself right into a guilty verdict.
Look, I'll use whatever I think is right, lawyer. But I do need somebody to stand up and make legal nice with the judge. So you're in luck. You can collect that fee from my father unless you'd rather not get your hands dirty or touching a panther.
Now listen, son.
Don't call me son, and I won't call you mother.
Stop striking poses, Miller. I'm an attorney, not a TV interviewer. Now, if you want us to help you, well, you've got to cut out your propaganda speeches. We aren't interested in your politics. We're just interested in your rights.
What this social system gives me is handouts, not rights. I'll have my rights when we change this whole fascist setup. Anyway, what's the difference, man? What can you do for me? A pig's dead and they want a brother to burn for it. And they've picked me?
Wrong. A policeman's dead and they think they have the man who killed him. Now, if they're wrong, we can do a lot for you. We can get you off.
Oh, happy day.
Oh, by the way, just for the record, are you innocent?
Just for laughs. Yes.
Okay, now what was his name? Michael.
His name was Staggerly.
Right. Can you spell it for me? S-T-A-G-O-L-E-E.
Staggerly.
Right. Okay, can you tell me any more about him? Like what he did?
Miss Wilson, I'm Neil Darrow, Kenneth Miller's attorney.
Okay, let's work on the papers some more. And I want to see good, clear handwriting. Coffee?
No, thank you.
You're a long way from the offices of Nichols, Darrow, and Darrow. What can I do for you?
Well, I need help. I'm not getting much of it from Ken. I believe he's innocent, but he seems to want to lose. Now, you were with him when the police got there. What happened?
Look. I've got to know.
When they hammered on the door, Ken told me to stay put. When we heard the shot, he ran up to see what happened. That's when they grabbed him. I went after him. Wilkerson was already on the hood of the car when Ken got outside.
Well, now, there must have been somebody else there. Wilkerson was pushed off that porch.
But there wasn't. We were alone. Ken didn't see anybody else when he ran out, and neither did I.
Miss Wilson, the search warrant listed drugs and illegal weapons, neither of which were found. No one else was there but you and Ken Miller. Where was everybody else?
I don't know.
Yes, you do. You were warned, weren't you? You knew about that raid in advance.
We didn't know anything. We were making love. That's why we were there. We'd been there all night.
You're lying.
I'm not.
Oh, come on! You're lying, you know it, and I know it. And you're risking Ken's life. Now, you're trying to hide something. What could possibly be that important?
Ken is innocent. I'll testify that he was inside with me when that cop's gun went off.
But don't you understand? Because you were with him, your testimony won't carry any weight with the jury.
It's the truth.
It's half the truth. Now, if you were warned about that raid, I've got to know about it, to be able to prove it.
Why?
To establish Ken's state of mind, his lack of intent. If he was expecting a raid, then he wouldn't want any trouble. There was no motive for picking a fight with Wilkerson. Now, please tell me the truth, because without it, we've got no case.
I may get into trouble for this. But you're right. We knew about the raid.
How'd you find out?
From a friend of mine. A girl named Teresa Lopez.
Will she testify?
No. I don't think she will.
All cigarettes out, please. Remain seated and come to order. Court is now in session.
Let the records show that the defendant, all counsels, and all jurors are present in the court. Mr. Matthews, you may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The people call Dr. Charles Rowland.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear in the matter now before this court to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your name, please, and spell it for the record.
Dr. Charles Rowland, R-O-W-L-A-N-D.
Be seated.
Dr. Rowland, what is your present occupation?
Deputy Chief Medical Examiner for the County Coroner's Office.
And in that capacity, did you have occasion to examine the body of the decedent Detective Sergeant Wilkerson at the scene of his death and subsequently?
Yes, I did.
At what time did you first observe or examine the body?
6:30 a.m., 28th of August this year.
And did you determine the time of death?
Yes. Death occurred approximately at 6:05 a.m.
Did you later supervise an autopsy of the decedent?
Yes, I did.
And what was the cause of death?
Head injuries resulting from a fall, massive skull fracture, cerebral hemorrhage.
In your expert opinion, doctor, were there any indications that the decedent was engaged in a struggle before the fatal fall?
Yes, there was a severe bruise on the left side of the victim's ribcage.
Could he have received this bruise in the fall itself?
Not in my opinion. I'd say he received a sharp blow from the front that propelled him through the porch rail.
Could he have slipped and fallen into the railing, doctor?
He couldn't have broken the railing that way, merely by falling. It appeared to be very sturdy.
Your Honor, I will stipulate that Dr. Rowland is an expert witness in the field of pathology. However, it has not been established that his expertise includes structural engineering.
Objection sustained. The jury will disregard the answer.
Were there any medical indications that would support your opinion, doctor?
Yes, there was. The victim's lower back had severe bruises. Splinters from the wood found in his clothing coincided with the exact location of the bruise. It would require a lot of force and a sturdy railing to effect such an injury.
Thank you, doctor. Your witness.
Dr. Rowland, you testified, did you not, that the cause of death was a head injury suffered in a fall?
Yes, I did.
Were there any other injuries that could have caused the victim's death, other than the ones described in your testimony?
No, none.
You concluded that the bruise on the victim's chest resulted from a sharp blow received at the scene of the death?
Yes, I did.
Can you establish the exact time a bruise is received, Doctor?
Not the exact time, no.
Now, Sergeant Wilkerson was father of 2 children, both boys. Now, couldn't he have been bruised while playing with them or any of an infinite number of other possibilities?
I suppose it's possible.
How much did the victim weigh?
Approximately 190 pounds.
Well, isn't it true that a man weighing 190 pounds who slipped and fell backwards could break that railing and suffer the back injury you described?
In my opinion, no.
But you don't think it's impossible, do you?
No, I don't think it's impossible, just highly improbable.
I have no further questions.
Redirect, Mr. Matthews?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, Dr. Rowland. You're excused.
I told you, Miriam, I won't get involved. I mean getting someone else in trouble. I won't.
Miss Lopez, we could subpoena you, but we won't. It's up to you.
You got involved, Tess, when you told me about it. And Ken's the one who's in trouble. Just get on the stand and tell how you knew about it.
Look, I can't, and I won't.
Yes, sir. We had information that the Black Panthers had frequently made threats against Detective Wilkerson.
Objection! The last part of the witness's answer is non-responsive and based on hearsay.
Sustained. Strike everything after yes, sir. The jury will disregard the rest of the answer.
Lieutenant Markarian, did you offer special instructions to Detective Wilkerson before the raid?
Yes, sir.
What was the nature of these instructions?
I told him to conduct the search with a minimum number of personnel.
Why?
To attract as little attention as possible.
Why did you think this was necessary?
I wanted to avoid trouble.
What kind of trouble were you concerned about, Lieutenant?
Violence, shootings, possible deaths.
Your Honor, I object. No, man, I object. He sends his boys out with guns to occupy our community like a foreign troop and tells them to expect violence. Well, what's that supposed to cause but violence?
Mr. Miller, I warn you, this trial is going to be conducted in a civilized manner.
Civilized? You call this fascist power structures civilized?
I'm sure you and your counsel are both aware of the recent Supreme Court decision in the case of the state of Illinois versus Allen. Now, I prefer not to invoke it, but I will use physical restraint if order can't be maintained any other way.
Your Honor, I apologize for my client. He's under very great stress.
That's an explanation, not an excuse, Mr. Darrell. Will you instruct your client to obey the law?
He don't tell me what to do!
Consequences?
Nobody tells me what to do!
Sit down, Mr. Miller.
I'm just supposed to take that? Is that it?
That's a fact. Let us do the objecting. Come on, please.
Continue, Mr. Matthews.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examine.
Lieutenant McCarran, the search warrant marked People's Exhibit B for identification. That specifies illegal weapons and drugs. Isn't that true?
Yes, sir.
Then in order for the warrant to be issued, there must have been probable cause for the criminal conspiracy section to believe there would be illegal weapons and drugs on the premises.
That's correct. We had information to that effect.
What was the source for your information?
I decline to answer that question on the grounds that it would divulge privileged information under the regulations for the protection of police informants.
Way to go, baby. Now, ain't that something? He's taking the fifth.
Mr. Miller, don't try my patience any further. I want you to remain silent in this courtroom, and that's a final warning. Continue.
Am I correct in assuming that you did receive your information from a paid police informant?
I decline to answer that question.
Answer the question, Lieutenant. Counsel is not asking you to reveal the identity of the informant, only whether or not you received the information from a paid informant. Now, answer the question, yes or no.
Yes.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Now, you testified you were concerned that the appearance of the police at Panther headquarters might cause violence. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
Didn't your paid informants tell you that the Black Panther leaders have ordered their members not to offer resistance in situations like this one?
No, they didn't.
Then you're saying that you were unaware of this fact.
It's not a fact, it's a rumor. It's a fact that I was concerned about possible violence.
All right, Lieutenant. But you would be concerned about the safety of any police officer taking a part in a raid, isn't that true?
Yes.
Not just Sergeant Wilkerson.
That's correct.
Lieutenant, can you testify from your own personal observation that Sergeant Wilkerson and the defendant ever had any contact, or in fact, even knew of each other's existence?
Well, I think they must have.
Lieutenant McCarran, I didn't ask you what you think. I asked you what you know. Now, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, sir.
Well, then answer it, please. A simple yes or no, if possible.
No.
I have no more questions, Lieutenant. Thank you.
He's got all kinds of answers, though. Any kind you want. Anything to jack the Panther Party up. Is it perjury when a righteous police officer tells little white lies in court, Judge?
Would counsel please approach the bench?
Sir, please come on.
Gentlemen, I'm going to have to call an early recess, so you'll have an opportunity to speak to your client privately. I meant what I said. There are many reasons I don't want to invoke the Supreme Court decision. One, it would violate my own personal conscience, and secondly, it would have a terrible effect on the jury. But if it's the only option open to me, I'm going to have to resort to it.
Thank you, Your Honor. We'll do our best.
Court will recess for the next 30 minutes.
3 lawyers with nothing to say. A miracle.
Well, I'll say it for all of us. Judge Wiley doesn't want to have to restrain you, Mr. Miller, but he will for the duration of this trial if you don't stop this nonsense.
Well, right on. It'll be historically perfect. A black man in chains.
Oh, come off it, Ken. We've got a good case, and Wiley's a fair man. But you're going to end up in the gas chamber if you try to turn this trial into a political spectacular.
Well, what else is it? I'm innocent. They put the knife in me anyway, and I just take it? Sure thing, Master, laid on me, and this nigga just shout hallelujah. Well, later for them.
Ken, if all you want to do is to commit suicide in public, to use this court to make a martyr out of yourself, then we're off the case. We won't help you do that because it's pointless for you. It's completely futile.
You mean you're quitting me?
Either we're in charge of your defense, which means you listen to our advice and instructions, or we'll just have to step aside.
Well, step, baby. Master will just have to appoint one of his jive public defendants to lead me out of the jungle and into the sunlight. Isn't that a fact?
Sit down. Then all you saw was Sergeant Wilkerson sprawled out on the hood of the car and Kenneth Miller standing quietly by the back door. Isn't that correct, Sergeant Jonas?
Yes, sir. When I came around the side of the house, I saw Wilkerson, and his body was sprawled on the hood of the car, and Miller was above him and
Yeah,
started...
Jonas, running on down. The house nigger speaks.
Sit down, Mr. Miller, and be quiet.
You black cops hate your own brothers worse than the white ones do. Don't you?
Get down!
Will you? Don't you know what's bugging you? Don't you know what's bugging you, Jonas? Jonas! It ought to be Judas! Judas!
Tie and gag him.
I didn't kill anybody!
Tie him and gag him.
Court spring to find me guilty because I'm not willing to lick boots like the running dogs. How does it feel, Judas? You should have shot me when you had me. Now Mr. Charlie's gonna have all the fun, like always. If you had any guts, you're gonna hurt your lifetime!
Please continue, Miss Wilson. Tell the jury what happened next.
Like I said before, I was in the kitchen when the police knocked at the door. There was a shot from in back of the house, and Ken ran out to see what happened.
In other words, you and Kenneth Miller were together inside the building at the time of the shot.
Yes. I tried to look out a window, and then I ran out after him. The 2 policemen were there. They grabbed him right away. He didn't have time to do anything to Wilkerson, not anything.
I think you've had enough.
There's that enough?
Okay, it's your money.
That's right. And I earned it. I earned it.
What are you doing here? Dear old Daddy.
Ken, please. I didn't come here to fight with you. I want you to come home. I've got a job for you, a good job at the plant.
It's funny. Beautiful. The times you pick, old man. Do you know what's happening here this morning? They're gonna raid us. I'm waiting, and here you come dragging in those old sorry orphans with you.
A raid? A police raid?
I'm Miriam Wilson, and there is going to be a raid.
Miriam volunteered. With a woman here, they might not shoot the place up, but then they might, so you better get out.
No. No, we've got to talk.
We've talked.
We haven't. You won't listen.
Hey, he's got a plan. I go to work where he does, in the office with a button-down shirt and tie. And if I work hard and stay out of trouble, I turns white.
Anything? Anything else? Like a cup of black coffee?
Another drink.
I'm sorry. I can't give you another drink. Really, I'm awfully sorry, but I just can't. take it easy. I think you better get something to eat, huh? It's getting late.
You're right, it's getting late. Very easy to make mock of me, isn't it, kid? Can't we even try to talk?
I've got some breakfast cooking. I better go see about it.
All right, I'll say it again. I don't want to be a plastic honky.
You can be anything you want, but this crazy playing at being a revolutionary. 22 million against 200 million. And how many of our people even want to know you? Less than 5%.
You keep reading those surveys and watch the change. It
People
takes
are all
time to
alone.
unbrainwash 20 million people, and we're seizing the time.
You're wasting the time. Violence never accomplishes anything. It only serves to set our cause back. You've got the American people thinking all blacks are
No,
racist
when you're
maniacs.
forced to fight fire with fire, there's bound
You
to be
and
a
the
lot
Ku
of burning.
Klux Klan
But
are
we'd rather
soul
fight it
brothers.
with water, with
Oh,
our
sure,
breakfast for children's
sure,
program, and our
sure,
clinics, and our free clothing, and liberation
you give
schools.
those children a 2-hour harangue with their oatmeal, and you teach them how to use those machine guns and hand
Well,
grenades.
we've got
and
guns,
storing
sure. They send their pigs down here to attack and murder us. Why not?
The only time it happened here in L.A., there were more policemen hurt than
Right
killed.
on, right on. They come
Yeah,
after
you
us. We
know
got a
it.
right to barbecue some
They
up
come
north.
after you because you preach violence and stir up weapons. Illegal weapons which give them the right to come after you.
And kill us? From Bobby Hutton to Mark Clark to Fred Hampton, right on down to me? You're the one playing games, Daddy. Black skin and white dreams.
No, human dreams, kid. Human dreams. We'll make it someday as human beings. Every minority has suffered what's happening to us. The Irish used to be called subhuman trash. Oh, some of them even got guns and led riots, but most of them took it and stayed with it. Today, almost everybody wants to claim he's Irish.
Unless he happens to be black. Sorry, Dad, I rise with my brothers, not on top of them. And we're not a minority, not in the world. It is a colored human race. Black, brown, red, yellow, and just a thin scum of white on top. But it's gonna change. And whatever it costs me, I'll start that changing right here and now.
And get killed doing it.
But at least I'll know why. I've been dead for 20 years, and for what? So you can collapse in your executive desk and then get refused burial in a white cemetery. Go home, I live here.
Open the door, we're police.
Get out of here before they call you in. Pacific Airspace will love that. Come on, go! Up the stairs and out the back way. Pacific Airspace will love that. Pacific Airspace will love that. Get out of here before they call you in. Pacific Airspace will just love that. Come on, get out of here! No chance.
I killed that man, that pig. Stop it. I'll explain it was an accident. They'll believe me.
They think it's murder. A dead cop, they gotta think it's murder. Now, push come to shove, I can get a bunch of brothers to testify for me. Who'd come and lie for you?
You aren't.
I want it this way, Dad. If they gave you a job because they had to, and you did it better than any 10 of them. They gave you a token job, and you made it real. You shoved it in their white faces, and now you're one step from the top. You've got a lot to lose. Too much. I can't let that happen just because you wanted to help me. Ken, that's the first time you've ever admitted I had anything worth having. But I can't let you stand trial for something you didn't do. So I don't know. You gave me everything you could. Enough. Enough so that I know what I want to do with my life. And I am going to do, not just be done to. Please, let me do this. If you tell him what really happened, I'll call you a liar. I'll confess, Dad. Do you want me to do that? You want me to put myself in a gas chamber just to shut you up? Please, let me do this. Please, let me do this. You've been dead for 20 years. Please let me do this. You've been dead for 20 years. Please let me do this. You've been dead for 20 years. Please let me do this.
Because of the tragedy, I have agreed to withdraw restraints. With the understanding, of course, that you'll cause no more disturbances.
I understand.
Very well. Continue, Mr. Darrow.
We call Miss Teresa Lopez.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear in the matter now before this court to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and spell it for the record.
Teresa Lopez. L-O-P-E-Z.
Be seated.
Miss Lopez, do you know how the Black Panther organization learned of the police action which was to take place on the morning of the 28th?
Objection. Your Honor, this is simply digression.
It is no such thing, Your Honor. We intend to show that Kenneth Miller was fully aware of the police action beforehand, and that he therefore had no motive or reason for offering violence to any of the police officers involved, or for acting in panic or surprise.
Objection overruled. The question's pertinent. You may answer, Miss Lopez.
They learned because I told Miriam Wilson. I told her about the raid a couple of days before it was due to happen.
Exactly how did you learn of this projected police action?
From Patrolman Ernie Kramer.
Under what circumstances did Patrolman Kramer give you this information?
Well, I've known Ernie for a couple of years. We took some courses at City College together, and we got friendly. I mean, it's a funny way to meet a cop on campus. I'm sorry, I'm nervous.
That's perfectly all right. Just tell us in your own way.
Yes, sir. You see, Ernie's a worrier, and he was worried about this search of the Panther headquarters, and, well, he sort of let it slip about the raid. He was afraid that there would be heavy trouble, and so was I. See, I like Ernie very much. Ernie didn't know that I knew Miriam Wilson or anyone else who was tied with the Panthers, and Miriam and I went to school together, and I knew she was worried about her boyfriend, and I was worried about Ernie. So I told her.
Your Honor, I object to this entire line of questioning.
Your Honor, we are demonstrating how Kenneth Miller knew of the projected raid and why he could not have been startled into pointless violence. This witness's testimony proves that preparations were made in anticipation of a raid. No incriminating evidence of any kind was found, and only the defendant and Miriam Wilson were there. And they were there only because it was part of the plan for someone to be there when the police arrived. The contention that Kenneth Miller would attack a policeman under such circumstances lacks even a shred of credibility.
I overrule the objection. You may continue.
I have no more questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Very well.
Cross-examine, Mr. Matthews?
No questions.
Thank you, Miss Lopez. You're excused. Mr. Dowell, you may call your next witness.
The defense rests.
The defense therefore contends, ladies and gentlemen, that the people have failed to prove the material allegations of the indictment beyond a reasonable doubt. And as you will be instructed by the court, unless you have an abiding conviction that the accused is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, it is your duty and your responsibility to acquit. Before I close, I must remind you of something. And this can't be stressed too much. Something which goes to the very essence of our system of justice. Your verdict must be determined solely by the facts and must not in any way be affected by your emotions or your prejudices. Excuse me if I remind you of the solemn promise that each and every one of you made to me during the jury selection. That is, that the defendant's affiliation with the Black Panther Party would not influence your fair and impartial evaluation of the evidence and the testimony. And it's equally important for you to remember that you will be failing in your duty as jurors if you allow the defendant's behavior during the trial to be considered in any way or to have any influence on your deliberations. You see, Kenneth Miller is not on trial for contempt of court. He's on trial for murder. And his life is in your hands.
Will the defendant please rise and face the jury?
The foreman of the jury will please hand the verdict to the clerk.
The ladies and gentlemen of the jury find the defendant not guilty.
The case is closed. Jury is dismissed.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks. Ken, I want to ask you one question. Did you push Wilkerson off the porch?
You earned one answer. No, I didn't.
But you were out there in time to see who did.
Interesting idea.
Well, did you see who did it?
You earned one answer and you got it. I didn't do it, and that's all you gotta know.
But the system does work, doesn't it?
I got off, yeah. Not guilty. 3 cheers for the jury. They found an innocent man innocent.
They found the truth.
Those people from across town don't know anything about the truth. Not about me. They did nothing. You guys did it all.
Thank you.
That's not a compliment, that's a fact. 3 first-class attorneys against 1 lone, outclassed, underpaid deputy DA. That's what it took to get me clear of charges that should never have been made. Justice What if my father didn't have bread to buy you? Doors be slamming on me right now.
Well, Mr. Miller, you're wrong, but I know you'll never believe it.
Mr. Nichols, you know what I was thinking when you were making your summation? Working so hard for a little justice. I was wishing I had killed that cop. That would have been justice for me. I'll see you.
When cockle shells turn silver bells, then will my love return to me. When roses blow in winter snow, then will my love return to me. Oh, waily, waily, for love is bonny a little while when it is new. But love grows old and waxeth cold and fades away like morning dew.
Cigarette, Perdue?
No, sir. Thank you.
You're going to need some help. You believe that?
I believe you.
But you won't tell me about yourself.
There's nothing about me worth telling.
Especially to a cop?
To anybody.
Where'd you ever learn to stand like that?
In the backyard of a little town in southern Illinois when I was 2 years old.
All right, Perdue. 2 witnesses put you at the scene. You were running along a road toward some parked car. I've got to book you. You want a lawyer?
No, sir.
A public defender?
Is there any different?
Hey, book him.
Does that mean he's guilty?
No, not at all. Just indicates he needs a lawyer. He'll be found guilty when a good lawyer can't convince a jury to the contrary. By the way, who sent you to us?
I didn't look you up in the yellow pages. I know that you're good and expensive.
We try to live well.
Well, gentlemen, don't let these clothes delude you. I'm fairly well heeled, and I want him out on bail.
Forgive my curiosity, but How well healed are you?
2 million. That about do it?
I think that'll go a long way.
Can you get him out?
Well, it's possible. That is, if their case isn't too strong. It'll cost about 20,000.
I'll pay it.
Yes?
Neil calling you, Brian, from San Francisco.
Right, I'll take it in my office. Excuse me.
Well, there's 30. 10 for you. And there's plenty more. Just do everything you can for him. Use all the tricks of your slimy trade. I'm sorry I said that. I didn't mean it that way, really.
I know how you meant it.
Good. Well, what do we do now? What's next?
I buy you a beer.
I met him in Canada. He was ducking the draft up there, and I'd driven another draft dodger up there. And I met Jerry, and I fell in love with him. He's cool. He's very sweet, very easy to love. Thank you.
Tell me about the dead boy, Peter Callender. Did you know him?
Yeah, he was a skinhead, very uptight, very straight. Strangest cat there, really. Weird.
Weird. How?
Well, he talked to nobody but Jerry. Apparently, they had known each other from the same small town in Illinois. Jerry treated him like a long-lost brother. He gave him some bread and tried to get him to stick around.
And how did Callender react to this?
Like a zombie.
Did you talk to him much?
Just once. I'm afraid it was like visiting the death house. I tried to make up conversation like, how do you do? What's new? Straight talk like, well, I asked him what he was going to do with his life.
And what did he say to that?
Nothing, he said. But I asked him why, and he gave me a good reason. He said it was because he was going to be killed.
That's a pretty good reason, all right.
And he said it like it wasn't going to be an accident, but like he was doomed and he couldn't escape it. Like it would be
murder.
Yeah. Like murder.
I didn't know you were a flower child.
Peace is the man in.
Always? What's a bribery for?
A little harmless information with my affections. What's your boss got that I don't know?
You earn your fee, all right.
Edna, you have a materialistic mind. Didn't you know the adversary system is in the pursuit of justice, not money?
You must tell me about it sometime.
Well, I'd like to. Boyd didn't confess, did he?
The boy didn't give us the time of day.
Well, you're not giving me much either.
And what do you expect for 3 lousy roses?
Whatever you'd like to give, it's a good cause.
You talked to him yet?
No.
Well, he's no hippie, so don't let the long hair fool you. He had it short once in Vietnam, the Mekong Delta, where he got a bronze medal and an honorable discharge from the armed forces.
Well.
And by the way, I hate roses.
What would you like?
The money, Walt.
I'm Walter Nichols, your lawyer.
Who said so?
Your girlfriend, Grace Young. Also, I got bail for you, so we won't have to talk here.
No, we Won't have to talk anyway.
It's just that I get claustrophobia in jail.
I didn't know they gave bail for murder.
If the case isn't airtight, they do. Maybe the judge thought you killed him in a fight, did you?
I didn't kill him. That's all I'm going to say. So I don't know how you're going to prove I didn't.
The prosecution has to prove you did, and I could hamper him in his efforts. I've been known to do that.
How much was the bail?
The bond cost $20,000.
$20,000? Who would put up that much bread?
Can't say.
What do you mean you can't say?
Let's put it this way, I won't say. But I will say this much, it wasn't your draft board.
Man. Is she that rich?
It wouldn't be what somebody has. It would be what somebody put up, wouldn't it? Let's say it's an act of faith.
That's a lot of faith.
Well, is it enough to get us out of this place?
Man, you don't have claustrophobia or any other fear. I got a feeling you're just thirsty.
Right. Hey, would you hand me my stash bag?
All right. I knew what you meant back at the jail. That shut-in fear. Every hour the walls got closer.
You think I'm after 20 years, or a lifetime.
That's what I could get, huh?
Well, you could even get the gas chamber if I don't figure something out. I can't do that without your help, can I?
I didn't kill him. He was the best friend I ever had. I loved that guy. I grew up with him. Wherever he went, I went. Wherever I went, he went.
Even Vietnam? Come on, man. You got fingerprints like everybody else. The Army's got records. I know you have an honorable discharge and the Bronze Star. All I asked you was if he was there with you, that's all.
Yeah, we were there. And that's all I had to say. I knew him, we were there, and I didn't kill him. You understand? Better give her back the bail money and put me back in that cell.
I don't put people in jail. I keep them out.
All right. I'll go home.
Do me a favor?
I don't know.
Cut one of them off. The hair or the beard or the mustache, something.
What for?
So you look nicer in court. Harder to recognize. Don't make me jump that generation gap. I'm too old and too fat. Come on.
I'll give it some thought. Thanks.
For what? We haven't done anything for each other.
For the beer.
Where could I find Jerry Perdue?
Right around the bend, man.
What do you care how much money I've got or what I do with it? Is it your business?
Far from it.
Oh, are you thinking of going back to Canada like a phony draft dodger? You know, that was really wild. I just don't dig it. Do you?
No.
Don't just stand there like a lousy narc. Sit down.
Why not? Man, you play that thing?
Not often.
He doesn't want any help from anybody.
I know.
Not your brains or my money. What did he do, kill that boy?
Ask him.
Ask him. Swell and get an answer in smoke signals. Tell me something, was Jerry really in the Army?
They say so. Vietnam, no less.
Perfect. Just perfect. And he's had me hiding out a draft evader. What, are you undercover for the CIA or something?
Cool it. Just cool it. Everybody keeps something. You kept something from me, and I kept something from you. Go drink some wine.
Why don't you help yourself?
Would you have a beer in there?
Sure, come on. You want a glass?
Can will be fine.
What are you doing here?
I get restless. Can't stand offices or crowds, bars. Thought I'd talk to him in his own quarters. Loosen him up a little bit.
It won't help.
I have to see. He just said that everybody keeps something. I think he's keeping a whole lot. Let's see if we can find out what it is.
Okay. Well, how do you like that? He's split. I don't know, maybe I should have just left him in the slammer.
No.
Well, I just can't talk to him. I can't communicate.
Well, you can communicate without talking.
What do you mean?
Well, he has to sleep sometime. When he does, cut his hair. Cut some of it, at least. He's beginning to look like Judas Iscariot. You and I can't beat that rap. You know, just enough to make him presentable in court.
You are the bartender at...
The Hawk and the Dove. Yes, sir.
Now, you were acquainted with Peter Callender.
As a customer.
As a customer. And also with the defendant, Jerry Perdue?
As a customer.
Would you say that they were friendly to each other?
Well, I guess so. I'd say the defendant was the friendlier of the two.
Why would you say that?
Well, he used to do all the talking. Callender just listened and stared into his booze. Of course, being quiet isn't necessarily unfriendly in my book.
And they both came into your bar frequently.
Who are those people?
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Peter's mom
I'd
and
say
dad.
occasionally.
Now, would you say that either one of them ever said anything to you that would indicate that they weren't friendly?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Callender did.
When?
The night before he was killed.
Tell us exactly what he said.
Well, they both come into the bar together and had a beer, played the jukebox, and then Jerry there, the defendant, suddenly got up and walked out as though they had beefed. I served him 2 fresh beers, and I asked, was he coming back? And Callender said, no, he wasn't. And I said, was there any trouble or anything? And he kind of smiled a little and said, yeah, a little. He's gonna kill me.
Thank you.
Now think. Was it he's going to kill me? Or he kills me? You know what I mean?
I know.
Which?
He's gonna kill me, he said.
Now, you could be mistaken about that, couldn't you?
No, sir.
Nice try. No redirect, Your Honor.
The witness is excused.
Hello, anybody home?
Here he comes.
Well, hello.
Violets.
Yes, I recognize them.
They're the only flowers I know, except roses. And the only birds I know are robins and owls.
You look like an owl, Walt.
I live like one. I don't wake up till dark.
I can dig that. You slept pretty good through that courtroom scene.
Well, the DA has the best of me. You see, he has people who will testify for him in his case. I only have you.
What do you want? I cut off all my hair, shaved off all my beard and mustache.
I don't want any sugar in that.
No.
Did you put sugar in?
No. Why, do you think it'd be LSD?
You know, today, when I was looking at Pete's mom and dad, it was just as if they were sitting on their front porch on Sunday, man, back home. I kept looking at her. I wanted to catch her eye. When I finally did, I swear she smiled at me. Just a little. It was like she didn't believe anything that was going on. When my folks died, I lived with them for a while. And she was just like my own mother. It's really nice. That old white house with lilac bushes. Back in Illinois, the violets really grow, too. Believe it.
Yeah, they sure do. I know that for sure. When cockle shells turn to silver bells, then will my love return to me. When roses blow in winter snow, then will my love return to me. Oh, waily, waily, for love is bonny a little while when it is new, but love grows old and waxeth cold and fades away like morning dew.
That was it, man. The real thing.
I was born back there. My mother weighed 90 pounds, and she gave me her guitar as soon as I could lift it.
It was probably at the age of 2, or in the crib like Hercules.
She used to sing those songs to me. Remember this one, Jerry? Where, oh, where is dear little Susie? Where, oh, where is dear little Susie? Where, oh, where is dear little Susie? Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch.
Come on, boys, let's go find her. Come on, boys, let's go find her. Come on, boys, let's go find her. Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch.
Picking up pawpaws, put them in your pocket. Picking up pawpaws, put them in your pocket. Picking up pawpaws, put them in your pocket. Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch.
What are you trying to make him do?
Well, trust me, like me, talk to me. There's something that he has to tell somebody, but he can't. He wanted to tell Mrs. Callender, but he couldn't. even if it cost him his life. And it might cost him his life if he doesn't tell me. I can't do anything unless I know what he's hiding.
Well, I think if anyone can do it, you can. Do you want to quit?
If I did, would I bring you violence?
Save him. Just save him, whatever it takes.
Well, a miracle. You know, they happen to me from time to time. I am an old mystic from the river country. I believe in miracles.
Now, you were driving along slowly looking for an address.
Yeah. 25 Pine Road.
You have a friend living there?
Chris Shoemaker, my wife's brother.
I see. Well, what happened before you found it?
Well, I was driving along, like I said, and looking for the turnoff, and out of the corner of my eye, I see this kid running, this man. Well, actually, instinctively, I swerved the car, right? And the headlights sprayed along this ditch. And I saw a man lying there like he was dead. So I come out of the car and stare up the road, and I see him running towards a parked car.
Let the record show that the witness is indicating the defendant, Jerry Perdue.
How was he dressed? Can you tell me? I mean, I only ask because, frankly, I can't tell them apart. Hippies, I mean. Sometimes even the boys from the girls.
It ain't easy. But I seen him.
Well, how was he dressed?
Well, he had a light coat on and, you know, them tight pants.
Shoes?
Oh, either bare feet or light-colored sneakers. You know how they all dress.
I mean, they all dress pretty much alike, don't they?
Pretty much.
So, they all look alike to you, isn't that what you're saying?
Oh, no. Not their faces. I seen his face clear in the headlights.
Huh? How much of his face?
All of it.
All of it? What, didn't he have a mustache?
Yeah.
And a beard?
Yeah.
And long hair?
But that's still him. Right there.
That's all. It's very groovy, man.
Any redirect, Mr. Phillips?
Yes. I think we got it made.
Mr. Greeley, you identified this young man at a police lineup, isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
And there were half a dozen other men there lined up for you to see?
6 or 7.
So at the time that you identified this defendant, he had not yet shaved his mustache or his beard or cut his hair, had he?
No, sir.
No more questions?
The witness is excused.
You think we've got it made? You're wrong.
Colleague made a fool out of this star witness.
No, he didn't. He just confused him. The jury might not like that. A smart lawyer confusing a simple, honest, middle-class old war veteran like him, especially over a long-haired hippie like you. No, sir, not even if I tell them that you're a war veteran. You know there's 27 million war veterans in this country?
Talking about the live ones?
That's right. There are 5 of them in that jury box that think they made the world safe for people like you, and they're beginning to regret it.
Some world, some safety.
Jerry. Tell me the truth.
If I knew it, I might have a chance. You talk to him.
I've tried.
Well, keep trying.
Well, where are you going?
I don't know.
Well, I'll go with you. What's wrong?
Nothing. I got an idea. Not brilliant, maybe even a little desperate. It's the best I can do. can't drink alone. I talk to myself and nobody answers. Yeah. Join me.
Why not?
Let's have a drink to my summation.
Oh. What you gonna say?
Circumstantial evidence.
Is that all?
Yeah, but you're really the right kind of a guy. Come from the Middle West, you know, the old heartland, played football, quarterback, and all that.
And?
Oh, thank you. Told me something about yourself. Let's have a little drink of that. Pour me some. And he fought for his country, etc. In Vietnam, etc. Got a medal, etc.
What's the etc.?
Rhetoric. If the Congress of the United States is mixed up about a war, etc., half the people are picketing their consciences, what the devil happens to poor PFC?
That's me.
You tell me something better.
He gets mixed up, all right. He freaks out pretty good. PFC, etc. In the villages, the people skitter about like little birds. Some kid, man, some 14-year-old kid, so terrified, he takes your fear away and you lower your rifle. Bam, he shoots you in the head. Who's the friend? Who's the enemy? Not like your war, you know? Different uniforms shot at each other. German was a Nazi. And what the devil is a VC? I mean, how do you... How do you tell him from a friendly peasant?
I don't know.
That's good. Neither do I.
Pick a little.
Yeah.
Had an old dog, his name was Blue. Bet you $5 he's a good one, too. Saying, come on, Blue, you. Dug his grave with a silver spade, lowered him down with a golden chain, saying, go on, Blue, I'm a-comin' too.
Was Pete in your outfit?
Went all the way together. And he was so cool. And I leaned on him. I guess I always did, too. Time we were dumb little kids shooting baskets or shooting rabbits. He never liked to kill anything. He used to use a single-shot .22 to shoot squirrels with. Want to give him the best of it. The odds are about 50 to 1 in their favor. Never used a shotgun. He was a good shot, man. He needed somebody to yell at him. Hey, Pete! Kill it! That squirrel's a damn commie.
What happened to him?
You're trying to brainwash me.
Why would I do that?
Walt, you're a crafty old cat.
I'll drink to that. I'll also level with you. There's something more, something you never told anybody. Not one living soul. Something that his mother and father sitting there in that courtroom should never hear. The silence that you'll do at least 20 years for.
20 years. Yeah, Pete's doing forever. Half the dudes I knew out there are doing it. Slim, Verge, Terry, Joe, the Chicano.
The Battle Boys. The Battle Brothers.
You almost made it home. When does killing become murder?
By law,
What law?
self-defense.
I think Pete wanted to be killed.
Why?
I don't know. It's weird, man. But I think he wanted me to kill him.
Punish him for something you knew about? Something that happened out there? Come on, soldier, tell it. Get it out of your system. You don't want to carry it around like Pete did and go crazy? Now, he did something that he couldn't live with. Were you in on it? Is that it?
Nope. I was just there.
Look, you can tell me. I won't use it. You can believe that, and you can believe me. So you better tell somebody.
If I told you something you could win it with, you mean you'd pass? You'd blow it before you'd cop out? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
My word has no price tag on it.
Then what do you want to know for?
It might help me, make me believe in you, maybe even admire you.
Or pity me?
Well, that's right. At least I could plea for you then with a little more conviction, a little more heart and less brain. You know what I mean? I could make that jury start to feel instead of sitting there like a bunch of computers.
I'd like to tell it. I'd like to tell it just like it was. Maybe I could forget it.
Tell it to me.
It was VC country. Or at least that was the word. We were on ambush duty one miserable, rotten night. But we got ambushed. 4 of us got shot. The rest scattered. When morning came, Pete and I started heading back, trying to find our post. We spotted a VC running. I shot at him. Threw up his hands and stopped. There was a girl with him. 20 years old. 14, you can't tell. Man showed us an ID card that the Army passes out, but VC steal them, so we couldn't be sure. So we decided to take him back with us. Then all of a sudden, the man started screaming like a banshee and running off. Peter shot him down and chased after the girl. He caught her. They fell. And Peter...
He killed her?
After he raped her. Hmm? Hey, man. You know, Pete didn't do that. That was somebody else. That was somebody different. That was somebody who'd spent too much time in a place that he just didn't understand. In a place where your friends were shot one day by somebody who the day before they'd given food to. Or killed by a landmine on a piece of dirt that you checked out that morning.
And you said nothing?
I said we'd killed 2 VCs. Maybe we did.
I heard it, Jerry. All of it. I'm glad I did. Oh, he didn't know I was there, honey.
All right, so you heard it. You gonna repeat it?
You know I won't.
You want to tell that story in court?
I won't, but yes, I'd like to. Peter Callender is dead, and nothing can hurt him now, not even the truth.
I'd go to the gas chamber before I'd tell that in court. I loved Peter. I love his mom and dad. I won't tell it.
All right. But tell me how he died.
We shipped out right after that. Pete was changed, like a guy I never knew. I'd catch him staring at me. Because I'd been there and seen it. I cut out, mostly for his own good. Went up to Canada. I wanted to be with the guys who hadn't bought it. Like, takes as much guts to say no as it does yes sometimes.
How did Pete find you?
Ran into me one day down on the strip. Bought him some booze, tried to get him to talk. It was no good.
What happened that night?
He showed up here. Maybe a little high on something. We drank some beer and talked about nothing. And then he said,
I had a dream. I went to visit the Chicano's mother, and I gave her a VC flag.
He was a nice guy.
Yeah. They all were nice guys. I should have stayed on with them.
They're all dead, Pete.
That's what I mean, man. It's like when you're dead, you're not guilty of anything.
Hey, come on now. Forget it. Just forget it. Nobody's guilty.
Okay. Forget it. We'll go down to that place and we'll just forget it and wipe the slate clean, man. And we'll forget everything except next year.
Right on. I thought I'd better get him smashed and talk to him. Like you got me smashed to talk to you. So we headed to town. We started acting really strange. And suddenly...
I said, pull over, man, or I'm gonna stick you right here. Now get out.
Hey, Pete, what's wrong with you?
You, man. You're gonna cop out on me someday, aren't you?
Hey, Pete, never.
I knew it that time on the strip. I looked behind that hair and that beard and I saw you, man. I'm gonna give you a chance to fight.
Hey, Pete, I can't fight you. Look, man, I won't cop out on you. I'll never cop out on you. Pete. Oh, God. I think he wanted to lose that night. He was clever and quicker than he played it. I think he wanted me to kill him. And I did. Remember, you gave me your word.
And I'll keep it if you hold me to it. Why should you? It was self-defense. I can get you acquitted.
If I told that on the witness stand, how Pete died, I'd have to tell why, wouldn't I?
Yes.
Do your best for me, Mr. Nichols. But you'll have to do it on your own.
prosecution's case. It's not only flimsy, not only based on an identification by a man who admitted that all people like that look alike to him. But this is the deepest flaw in the prosecution's case. No suggestion of motive. No hint of why Jerry Perdue, who grew up with Peter Callender and loved him like a brother, and loved his parents just like they were his own. No hint of why Jerry Perdue might have killed his best friend. So, ladies and gentlemen, when you search for an answer in this case, I beg you to keep these things in mind. And maybe you also might keep in mind the debt that we owe this boy. When his country asked him to serve in a tragic war on the other side of the earth, he went. He served his full time in those steaming, blood-drenched swamps and jungles. He emerged with honor. He emerged with honor and a Bronze Star. So while you are considering whether the state has proved its case beyond a reasonable doubt, also I want you to consider the debt, your debt, to this innocent young man, this distinguished, decorated soldier who stands here accused of murder.
You feel that this deadlock is incapable of being resolved?
Yes, Your Honor. After you returned us for another try at a decision, the split got bigger, if anything. We all sincerely believe a unanimous decision, one way or the other, is impossible.
All right. Thank you. I'm now convinced that the jury cannot reach a verdict in the case that's before this court, and therefore declare a mistrial. The court's adjourned.
All right, what does that mean? Do I have to go through this again?
You two just stay cool here. I'll go over and check with the district attorney. It's up to him. Well, Jim, what now? Do you hold him for retrial, or do you do the right thing and let him go?
The right thing? That kid was identified from a lineup. And his victim didn't say, oh, he kills me. His victim said, he's going to kill me, just as the record shows. So the right thing would be for me to try him again. Ask me if I'm going to do the pragmatic thing, Walt.
Glad to. Consider the question asked.
No. I'm not going to try him again. Because if I did, you'd go into your act again. You'd make the jury feel like ungrateful, unpatriotic, and godless brutes just for even thinking about treating a Vietnam hero like the criminal that he is. And the state would be out another fortune for a hung jury. You know, Walt, I thought that you were a better man than this.
Well, you're right about one thing, Jim. I'd do it again.
All right. I'm going to dismiss all charges against him. He's a free man. And he's your problem, Walt. He's on your conscience.
You know, there's an old saying.
Oh, I'm sure that you have one.
A burdened conscience will never need a hangman. So, Jim, pray for me. Well, you won't be tried again. The charges are dropped.
Walt, thank you. Hey. Let's go to my place, get out the guitars, and sing about something.
Hey, what? Stash bag.
Oh, wow. You really are a hairy Buddha.
Where, oh, where is dear little Susie? Where, oh, where is dear little Susie? Where, oh, where is dear little Susie? Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch. Come on,
on, boys, let's go find her. Come on, boys, let's go find her. Come on, boys, let's go find her. Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch.
Picking up pawpaws, put 'em in your pocket. Picking up pawpaws, put 'em in your pocket. Picking up pawpaws, put 'em in your pocket. Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch.
Mr. Parkinson, will you call your next witness, please?
The people call Mr. Bart Russell, Your Honor.
You solemnly swear in the matter now pending before this court to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your name and be seated, please.
Bart Russell. Now, Mr. Russell, you were with the deceased at the time of the accident.
I was.
You are acquainted with the defendant in that case. Do you see him in the court?
That's him, right over there.
Let the record show that Mr. Russell is indicating the defendant, Nicholas Chapman. Now, Mr. Russell, would you describe the circumstances under which you met the defendant?
Well, Frank and I were going up on a fishing trip. A little way beyond a town called Grundy.
Excuse me, just for the record. You said Frank.
Frank Danton, the man he murdered.
Your Honor, I move to strike the witness's answer.
Granted. The remark will be stricken from the record, please.
Excuse me, Your Honor, but I believe a point should be made here. And not just that the defendant is not charged with murder, but with homicide in the second degree. A growing number of citizens have become angry over the past few years. I won't dwell on the abuses of the law which have caused this anger. But if anyone's personal feelings should lead him to impute guilt to a man merely because he stands charged with a crime, a grave injustice could occur. I believe Your Honor should caution the jury against being influenced by this extremely damaging remark.
Mr. Darrell, I agree. As the defendant appears now in this court of law, he is an innocent man. He may remain legally innocent. He may become legally guilty by due process of law. Mr. Russell, your testimony will help guide the jury to a just decision. You will not make that decision yourself. Is that quite clear, sir?
Yes, sir.
You may continue.
Well, we'd been driving all night. Frank was tired. It's about 5 o'clock in the morning. I said we'd stop for breakfast in Grundy. He said it was just a little town, there wouldn't be anything open. As he reached for the map, we
Came to a curve. Maybe he was driving too fast. Maybe the curve was sharper than we thought. Anyway, we hit the soft shoulder. Frank lost control. We spun out and turned over. I don't know how many times we turned over.
Dr. Chapman, I'm sorry to wake you up, but a man just called in about a wreck. Somebody's hurt 6 miles out on River Road.
He's inside, Doc. We didn't try to move him.
That's good, Sam.
He was in the car, too. This here's Dr. Chapman.
He's alive. Sam, get the stretcher out of my car.
Is he badly hurt, Doc?
Do you know what type his blood is?
No. Can you tell me anything?
Not now. A negative. Sam, I want you to get George Carter and Oscar Perkins and get them to the clinic as fast as you can. Right. Easy. Give me a hand with his leg.
It's dropping, Doctor. 80/40.
Doctor, this is so primitive. Can't you just do something temporary till the ambulance gets here?
Grace, Nick Chapman. Grace, has your daughter got any balloons?
What on earth for, Doctor?
Grace, has she got any?
Yes, she does. She...
All right, now this is an emergency. Leave the switchboard and bring them to the clinic. And hurry.
Doctor!
Mr. Russell, the ambulance is still 2 hours away. I'm trying to keep him alive till then, but I don't think he's going to make it. Excuse me.
You saw him operate on Frank Danton?
I did.
You knew Mr. Danton to be alive when he arrived in Grundy?
Yes?
And he died on the operating table?
Yes, sir, he did.
You assume the defendant to be a doctor?
They called him that. Dr. Chapman.
And he did not deny being a doctor?
No.
How did you learn, in fact, that he was not even a high school graduate?
Gloria, that's Frank's widow. Gloria asked me to try to find out if Frank might have lived, if things had been handled differently. I had my attorney call the State Board of Medical Examiners.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Your witness.
Mr. Russell, when Mrs. Danton asked you to call your attorney, was the subject of malpractice mentioned?
Yes, I believe it was.
You testified that you were with Mr. Danton when the defendant arrived at the scene of the accident. Is that correct?
That's right.
What did the defendant do?
He looked in the car, said Frank was still alive.
Did he say anything else?
Said something about there wasn't time to wait for the ambulance.
Did he mention bleeding?
I don't remember. Well, I was confused by the accident.
Mr. Russell, I can call 4 witnesses who will testify that the defendant said this man is bleeding to death. Now, do you still say you don't remember?
He probably said that, yes.
In fact, later on, you saw a great deal of blood, didn't you?
Yes.
And when they moved him into the clinic from the defendant's car, he was still bleeding. That's how you knew he was still alive. Isn't that true?
Yes.
You were concerned over the lack of a blood bank in Grundy, I believe.
Yes, I was.
And did you discover on investigation that the defendant had taken blood samples from every citizen of Grundy, brought them here to 5 Points, had them typed at Dr. Johnson's lab, and then memorized them?
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is loading the question with improper information.
Sustained. You may rephrase your question, Mr. Darrell.
I'll withdraw the question. By the way, Mr. Russell, did Mrs. Danton ever receive a bill from the defendant?
No. No, I don't believe she did.
Thank you.
Dr. Weiss, will you state your title, please?
Chief of Pathology, Midland General Hospital.
You examined the body of Frank Danton on July 26th?
I did.
Could you describe your findings, please?
The deceased had sustained severe injuries. There were fractures of the clavicle and 3 ribs. There were contusions in the right lung and a punctured esophagus.
Could you assess the competency of the treatment, doctor?
The procedures were very unorthodox.
Could you explain, please?
I found a balloon in the esophagus.
A balloon? Could you hazard a guess as to why the defendant might have done such a thing?
No.
Could you characterize the work done by the defendant as, say, competent or incompetent?
Oh, I'd have to say incompetent. I mean the balloon.
Thank you, doctor, very much. Your witness?
Dr. Weiss, are you acquainted with a device known as the Sengstaken tube?
Yes.
What is this, please, Doctor?
That's a Sengstaken tube.
Would you explain its principle to us, please?
It's used occasionally for severe bleeding in the esophagus. The rubber tube is fed into the stomach and the expandable section is inflated. The outward pressure helps control bleeding.
The expandable section is inflated, say, like a balloon, and this is used to help stabilize hemorrhaging.
Yes.
Doctor, you said the deceased had a punctured esophagus. Now, could the defendant's use of a toy balloon have been an attempt to improvise the Sengstaken principle under emergency conditions?
I can't speak for the man.
But the principle, Doctor, he did employ the principle of the Sengstaken tube, and the deceased did have a punctured esophagus.
Yes.
Yes, Walt. What's the word?
4-letter word. The worst one. Can't.
No way.
Nope. Man takes a leave, he usually hitchhikes on any plane that he can find a seat on. Doesn't have to leave a forwarding address as long as he reports back when he's supposed to.
Without him, we're just about plowed under.
Why not ask the judge for a delay?
I intend to, but I don't think he'll go for it. So all I'll be able to do is stall. I got 42 people here from Grundy who'll swear that Nick was Louis Pasteur and the Mayo brothers combined, but the judge won't hold still for much of that either.
How many more witnesses has the prosecution got to throw at you?
Only one that could hurt us. Her name is Woodley, but I don't think he's found her.
State your name and be seated, please.
Angela Woodley.
Miss Woodley, you are a registered nurse.
Yes, sir.
You were employed at Gladstone General Hospital 2 years ago.
Yes, sir.
You knew the defendant, Nicholas Chapman.
Yes, I knew him. He was an orderly.
What were his duties?
Oh, checking laundry inventory, helping push patients up to surgery, cleaning up.
Was he required to treat the patients in any way?
No. That's the responsibility of licensed personnel.
Was there an occasion during Mr. Chapman's stay at Gladstone Hospital when he, in fact, did treat one of your patients?
Your Honor, I'll object to this line of questioning as irrelevant and immaterial. The defendant is not on trial for events which allegedly took place over 2 years ago.
If Your Honor, please. The purpose of this witness's testimony is to establish modus operandi and common plan.
I'll overrule your objection. You may answer the question.
I'll repeat the question, Miss Woodley. Did the defendant treat one of your patients at Gladstone Hospital?
Yes. He cut open a man's throat.
Will you explain the circumstances, please?
There was a patient who had 24-hour nursing. He was recuperating from chest surgery. His nurse left him just for a minute. Mr. Chapman saw her leave, so he decided to go in and see about her patient.
On his own volition.
Well, he said later that he heard a noise. Anyway, he saw the man and decided he was cyanotic.
Turning blue.
Yes. He took a knife out of his pocket, opened the man's trachea, and put in a rubber tube. After that, he called the doctor.
Is it your testimony that the defendant in a large metropolitan hospital, within calling distance of a dozen qualified physicians, decided to cut open a man's throat and actually did so?
Yes, sir.
Can't I get through to you? When she took the stand, we lost the case.
Then we lost it, and whether I testify or not, it doesn't make any difference.
Well, how can you make an assumption like that? Now you're trying to practice law without a license.
Brian, I told you before we started that I would not take the stand.
Before we started, we thought we could find Major Weber. We didn't know they'd come up with Mrs. Woodley. Now, can't you get it through your head? Things have changed.
Well, not for me, they haven't.
Look, Nick, if you don't testify, I'm going to lose you to the prison system for 20 years. Now, whether you care or not, I care.
Brian, I keep telling you I'd only make things worse. Parkinson will start in on me and I'll blow. Now, how's that going to look in front of a jury?
Well, lousy if you let it happen.
Well, it'll happen, Brian. It'll happen.
Oh, for God's sake, why?
Because I was wrong to do what I did. I know that. I believe it. But Parkinson will come at me, ignoring the fact that those people had nothing. No doctor at all. He'll come on like there's no problem of medical care in this country and try to make me look like a con man, and I will blow sky high.
Are you trying to tell me that losing your temper is worth 20 years in prison?
No. I'm only telling you what'll happen if I take the stand. What good can I do anyway? I mean, what am I going to tell them? That I'm a really great doctor? I don't even believe it myself.
No? Well, a couple of hundred guys who've come back from Vietnam believe it.
Brian, that's got nothing to do with it, and you know it.
Look, Nick, for the last time, the very last time, about the only chance we've got at all is if you testify and keep your cool under cross-examination. I'm advising you to do this. It's what you're paying me for.
I'm sorry, Brian. No dice.
Mr. Darrow, are you ready for the defense?
No, Your Honor, I'm not. The defense has been unable to locate its most important witness, in spite of the fact that we've made every conceivable effort to do so. If the court please, I'm going to make a motion for a delay of 1 week to give us the time we must have in order to find this witness and bring him back here to testify.
A continuance was granted at your request before the trial began, Mr. Darrow. You have had ample time to prepare your case, so I'm going to deny your motion. Please proceed.
Very well, Your Honor. Defense calls Mr. Earl Milford. Mr. Milford, how long have you known the defendant, Nicholas Chapman?
Ever since Swede Larson got shot. That'd be October 14 months ago.
Mister, I need this car to get a man to a doctor. The man's been shot.
Get in. What happened?
It was an accident. Damn city hunter. Road's off to the right up here, just a little ways.
How far is the doctor?
5 points.
I came through there. That's a long way.
Road's dry. I'll make it in under 4 hours.
This man hasn't got 4 hours. There must be a doctor closer.
Used to be one in Grundy, but he died. Nearest doctor's in 5 points.
Grundy's just ahead, isn't it?
Yep.
Is there any place we can take this man there?
Well, there's Doc Bratton's old clinic. But Larson's all tore up in that bullet. The man needs a doctor.
Let's go to the clinic.
What are you, a doctor or something?
Yeah, or something. This man needs blood. Any way of finding out his type?
No.
Mr. Larson survived the accident?
Yep. He's sitting right there.
Did the defendant tell you he was a doctor?
No, but I watched through the door while he was fixing Swede. By the time they got the ambulance there from 5 Points, he was out of the woods. Doc Johnson said that he...
Thank you, but we'll be hearing from Dr. Johnson later, Mr. Milford. Can you tell us how Nick Chapman happened to settle in Grundy?
Yes, sir. It was me. I talked him into it.
You were convinced the defendant was a doctor?
I saw what he did in the operating room. The man was a doctor.
I saw supplies in the clinic, Mr. Milford. Somebody's practicing medicine around here.
You're absolutely right, young fella. 1 whole day a month. That's when Doc Johnson drives up from 5 Points.
He can come in for emergencies, can't he? Or send an ambulance?
Sure. Long as the one who's hurt can wait 4 hours. You traveled every turn on that road. You know the problem. We need a doctor here. Need one bad.
I'm afraid I'm not your man, Mr. Milford.
Why not? You in trouble?
Mr. Milford, if I were to tell you now that I'm not a doctor, I'd be good for a long stretch in the penitentiary. So I'm not going to tell you that.
But he changed his mind after all.
He came back through town, but he hadn't changed his mind.
But you were able to persuade him to stay.
Mr. Darrell, I gather Mr. Milford knew Mr. Chapman did not have a medical degree. Has the witness been informed his testimony incriminates him in a conspiracy?
Yes, Your Honor. I informed Mr. Milford. He insists on testifying in this way.
Well, Mr. Milford, as long as you understand, you may be giving self-incriminating testimony, which you are not required to give.
I understand, Your Honor.
Mr. Milford, you did persuade the defendant to stay.
I think Mrs. Larson helped. She was expecting a baby. She told him how it was, being a woman in a town with no doctor. But it was mostly me. I told him how many people lived scared and died early since we lost Doc Bratton.
In fact, his real reason for staying then was to meet emergencies rather than to practice medicine per se.
Yes. My neighbor still came to Doc Johnson here in 5 Points. Dr. Chapman saw to that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Milford. Your witness?
Mr. Milford, are you a doctor?
No, sir.
Do you have any medical training?
No, sir.
But you do own the building which is used for the clinic in Grundy.
Yes, sir.
Do you collect rent from the defendant?
Yes, sir. Well, I don't want to, but...
But you do take the money?
Yeah.
And other people pay you money for rentals, for real estate, insurance payments? Isn't it in your business interests to keep the citizens healthy and in Grundy?
Objection, Your Honor. That question is irrelevant and unfair.
Sustained. No more questions, Your Honor. Would you like a drink?
No, thanks. Not while I'm working.
That's to tell me that this is not a social call?
Mr. Parkinson, I came to plead a case. Plead. Like when you're on the mat, but it's wrong if you lose.
As bad as that?
Yep. My client won't take the stand. Our key witness is lost, strayed, or stolen.
So you want to talk about making a deal?
That's right. Now, you know why Nick went to Grundy. You know what he did. You've got him on the license charge. Surely you can see that murder, too, is overkill. It's just unfair.
You're asking me to drop the homicide charge?
Pleading. That was the word, remember? Pleading. As a man with a conscience.
Well, in this case, my conscience is more concerned with innocent victims. A man who hasn't even got a high school diploma tells the community that he has 8 years of medical training.
He never told anyone that.
By not denying it, he was committing criminal fraud against those people. A fraud which led inevitably to a death which could have been avoided.
That hasn't been proven. But it is a fact that he did save lives.
Is it? How many expert witnesses are you going to call to testify to that from their own observation?
Oh, come on. You already know the answer to that. That's why I'm here.
I'm sorry, Mr. Darrell. I can't help you.
Mr. Parkinson,
Where there's criminal intent, there's always a motive for personal gain, a motive that's not to be found in anything Nick Chapman's done. He doesn't deserve to be crucified.
I am not out to crucify anyone. We're facing a huge social problem, Mr. Darrell. Quackery. And by any definition of the word, Mr. Chapman is a quack.
He is a trained medical technician whose talent should be used, not wasted.
Mr. Darrell, a man is dead because he broke the law, and I'm going to do everything I can to see he gets the maximum penalty.
You know as well as I do that if medicine were practiced strictly according to law, people will be dropping like flies. You want to talk about a social problem? Let's talk about the non-existence of doctors in areas like this one right here.
I am just as aware of that problem as you are. But to try to solve it by lowering the standards will make the problem a catastrophe.
That may be true, but a murder charge isn't needed to make that point.
Yes, it is. Frank Danton was not your client's only victim. Now, I don't know how many people died because of him, but I do know that there was at least one more.
You expect me to believe that?
It's true.
But why wasn't it in the indictment?
Because the victim's widow would not testify against Chapman. But from what I know about her husband's death, the murder charge stands, and nothing and nobody is going to make me drop it.
I used to spend one day a month in Grundy. After Dr. Chapman moved there, it wasn't necessary.
Dr. Johnson, you examined Mr. Larson after he'd been wounded by a gunshot October last?
Yes, I did.
Well, would you please tell us your reaction to the treatment he had received?
The repair work appeared to be very competent. Suturing was neat.
And you assumed it to be the work of a physician?
Yes, I did.
Now, as an expert witness, Doctor, could Mr. Larson have survived the ride here from Grundy without emergency treatment?
I'd say he wouldn't have. A deer rifle leaves a big hole in a man.
During the past 14 months, did the defendant refer a good many patients to you here in Five Points?
I saw quite a few of his people, yes.
And in that time, you met the defendant on several occasions?
Yes, I have.
You always assumed him to be a doctor of medicine?
Well, he seemed to know what he was doing. Yes, I did.
Do you remember his ever saying he was a doctor?
No.
Did he have a degree on the wall in Grundy?
No.
You didn't question that?
Well, I thought it was maybe an attitude of young doctors today. Or maybe he just hadn't got around to it.
Thank you, Doctor, very much. Mr. Parkinson?
Dr. Johnson, when did you take your degree?
1932.
You've been back to school, I presume, for refresher courses.
No, I keep pretty busy.
Medicine has changed considerably in the last 30 years, hasn't it?
Just like everything else, yes, it has.
With your schedule, do you find time to keep up with the latest medical journals?
I spent my last vacation reading medical journals. That was in 1958, when they still had a doctor up in Grundy.
Dr. Johnson, didn't you ever wonder at the number of referrals the defendant sent you?
No, he didn't have the basic testing and lab equipment up there. He'd have been a fool not to send people here when it was time to...
No more questions, Doctor. You may step down, Doctor. Your Honor, a witness has come forward that is very important to this case. I request permission to reopen the people's case in chief. Permission granted.
You solemnly swear in the matter now pending before this court to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your name and be seated, please.
Clara Stockton.
Mrs. Stockton, would you mind explaining to the court why you waited until today to come forward with your testimony?
Well, I got to thinking about what you said last week. I mean, if Mr. Stockton didn't have to die, then...
You say, if Mr. Stockton didn't have to die. In other words, your husband died under unusual circumstances?
Well... Yes, sir, he did.
Could you describe what happened, Mrs. Stockton?
Well, he woke up sick. He had the headache and his stomach was bad. So I took him into Dr. Chapman.
And Mr. Chapman treated him?
Yes, sir. He gave him something to settle his stomach and for the pain.
And sent you home. And then what happened, Mrs. Stockton?
Well, that night, Mr. Stockton, he died.
Well, Mrs. Stockton, I'm sorry to ask you to relive this time again, but we must know all the details. Were there no other symptoms?
Well, yes, sir. He took awful sick in the afternoon and got delirious like.
You didn't contact the defendant again?
Well, yes, I did. Dr. Chapman, he come out in the early evening. But my husband was too far gone. We tried to make him comfortable, but it was too late to save him.
What was it that your husband was suffering from, Mrs. Stockton?
It was the meningitis. A fast kind.
Fulminating meningitis.
Yes, sir. That was it.
And did you later learn that the disease could have been diagnosed by a simple spinal tap?
Yes, sir, I did.
Thank you, Mrs. Stockton.
Mrs. Stockton, who told you your husband had fulminating meningitis?
Dr. Chapman.
And who told you he might have been saved if that spinal tap diagnosis had been made?
Dr. Chapman did.
Well, did you find this surprising, this admission coming from a doctor?
No. Dr. Chapman was our friend. Sometimes a bad sickness can take somebody fast like that.
You'd seen him cure other people when they were sick.
Objection. This witness is not expert in diagnosis or cure. Sustained.
I'll rephrase the question. Over the past 14 months, you and your neighbors had come to depend on the defendant. He was the man you turned to when you were sick.
Yes, sir. Dr. Chapman took good care of us.
He delivered your babies. He took care of people in emergencies. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes, sir. It was like when old Doc Bratton was alive.
Thank you, Mrs. Stockton.
Will there be redirect examination? Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Stockton, your husband became ill and consulted Mr. Chapman, not Dr. Chapman. He was diagnosed and treated, and he died. Afterwards, the defendant came to you and confessed that he had misdiagnosed your husband's illness. Wasn't that your testimony?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. No more questions.
Your Honor, the defense would like to recall Mr. Earl Milford to the stand, please.
Permission granted.
It was about 3 in the morning. John Stockton had died the night before. Nick come to my place and woke me up.
He woke you at 3 a.m.? Why?
To tell me he was leaving Grundy.
Did he tell you why?
Yep. Said he misdiagnosed a man, and the man died. He said, Mr. Milford, I'm ignorant.
A doctor could have saved him.
Man's dead. All right. But if every doctor quit the first time they lost a patient, there wouldn't be any doctors.
Earl, I'm talking about me. If a trained MD had seen John Stockton, he'd have handled the case right.
All right, you made a mistake, which young doctors do every day. But you've kept people alive around here who wouldn't be. You going off now and let him die. Is that it? I guess I made him ashamed of himself. Anyhow, we talked till the sun come up. Then he went out to tell Mrs. Stockton about her husband, so she could do whatever she wanted to.
But she didn't take any action. Did she tell you why not?
Yes. Because she remembered how it was before Nick Chapman come to town.
Thank you, Mr. Milford. No more questions. I've used every gag I can come up with to stall for time, Walt. Haven't you heard anything?
You'd be the first to know if I did. He has no family, but he has hundreds of friends, and I think we've called all of them.
Well, he must have told somebody where he was going.
Well, if he did, it wasn't anybody on our side.
I know you're doing your best, Walt. Thanks. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
I was setting traps. I had set out all but 4, and my mare stumbled and fell on me. Broke this here leg in 4 places.
Your Honor, we have heard from 8 consecutive witnesses that the defendant won their friendship and their confidence. Not one of these people is capable of assessing a doctor's professional capacity. Now, the prosecution doesn't deny that the defendant is probably a very popular man in Grundy. However, it seems to me that the defense is trying very hard to delay this case.
I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Parkinson that the testimony of the last 8 witnesses has been repetitive and not entirely relevant, Mr. Darrell.
Your Honor, the defendant may be imprisoned for 20 years because of the charge brought against him by Mr. Parkinson. I believe we should hear every shred of testimony.
The point is, we seem to have heard it all already. And unless you can show to the court's satisfaction that you will be presenting new information for the jury to consider, I'm going to have to ask you to rest your case.
I understand, Your Honor.
How long does it usually take?
Usually is one word I never apply to juries, except to say that the system usually works.
It's a good sign, isn't it? I mean, they're taking a long time.
Not necessarily, Nick. No, fast verdicts can go either way, just like the ones that take time. Hello? Your Honor, defense wishes to make a motion to reopen its case in chief.
Your Honor, I object. Mr. Darrell had more than enough time to present his case before the jury was instructed and began deliberations. This move makes it only too clear that he's willing to try anything to interrupt and delay the orderly progress of these proceedings.
I think we can give Mr. Darrell the opportunity to state his reasons for making the motion. Then I'll consider your objection. Proceed, Mr. Darrell.
Thank you, Your Honor. The defense has repeatedly informed the court that its most important witness could not be found. The witness has now been found and will be here in a few hours. And I believe Your Honor will agree that to allow his testimony will be for good reason and in the furtherance of justice.
Since the prosecution was allowed to reopen the people's case in chief, I see no reason why I should deny the same consideration to the defense.
Major Weber, you're a doctor of medicine?
I am.
You're acquainted with the defendant, Nicholas Chapman?
Yes, we served together in Vietnam.
Major, would you please outline for us the type of training received by medics in the service?
Well, there are various types.
Your Honor, I object. I fail to see the relevance of military training to this trial.
Your Honor, prosecution has labored to prove that the defendant not only practiced medicine without a license, but did so in a criminally inept fashion. Major Weber has traveled 8,000 miles to testify for him. I find that significant. He is the one man, perhaps in the world, who was able to give expert testimony as to the defendant's training, experience, and general ability.
I'm going to allow this testimony.
Thank you, Your Honor. Major, do you remember the question?
Yes, there are various types of medical training below the level of medical officer.
But specifically, what was the defendant's training?
Well, Sergeant Chapman was rated as an independent duty operator. That's the highest enlisted medical rank. These men are given intensive training in Army hospitals here in the States.
In what subjects?
Oh, surgery, anesthesia, orthopedics, a little dentistry, some obstetrics.
Obstetrics? Army medics deliver babies?
Well, Chapman took care of a couple of villages in Vietnam while he was there. He delivered quite a few babies.
Oh, then these specially trained men do more than just give emergency battlefield treatment.
Yes. At a remote missile base, for example, your medic is your doctor for months at a time.
A specific question, Doctor. Is the operation known as the tracheotomy a particularly difficult one?
Not comparatively, no. If a man is turning blue from an obstruction in his airway, you give him a hole to breathe through. You're buying time to get him to an aid station.
For a man with heavy battlefield experience, this would be almost a reflex action, then.
Yes. When you're down to seconds, you move.
Has Sergeant Chapman performed this operation?
Yes. I know of at least 2 occasions. There were probably many others. As a matter of fact, Chapman could treat traumatic wounds better than I when I first served in a combat zone.
Dr. Weber, I'm intrigued by the respect with which you apparently regard these men. But now, as a doctor, isn't there a danger in equipping amateurs with a little experience, a little knowledge?
The Army screens them very carefully for emotional balance. If a man's liable to start thinking he's a doctor, he doesn't move up.
He functions then as an extension of a physician, and only that.
Exactly. That's why the paramedic programs are very anxious to get a hold of them.
Paramedic programs. Doctor, would you please explain to the jury what a paramedic program is?
Well, they're fairly new here. A few medical schools have programs in which they take men with heavy experience and train them to be physician's assistants. Working here, I mean, in the States.
That's most interesting, Doctor. These men actually do many of the things that doctors presently do.
Yes. Give a busy doctor a good assistant, he can almost double his caseload.
These men go to medical school?
Yes. They get special courses in psychology, preparing them to handle patients, and they work for a time in the field with the doctor.
Well, how long does all this take?
Well, it depends on the man. Well, someone with Chapman's experience could be operative in about 6 months.
Then, if the defendant had been aware of these programs, in your opinion, Doctor, he would have been an acceptable candidate?
They'd have grabbed him. He's exactly the kind of man they're looking for.
Well, but now, what about licensing laws? No problems in that area?
Well, many states are passing new laws to allow qualified people to work. The need for medical personnel is the overriding consideration.
But the doctor still makes the decisions.
He's the one who's trained to take the responsibility, so he's got to call the shots. But when a doctor can increase his capability with a man like Chapman, that's a good way to go.
Thank you very much, Doctor. No more questions.
Cross-examine, Mr. Parkinson. No questions, Your Honor. You have no further witnesses, Mr. Darrow?
No, Your Honor.
You're quite sure?
Yes, Your Honor, I'm quite sure.
Bailiff will take charge of the jury. My instructions still stand. Court is adjourned.
I'll say one thing, Major. It was certainly worth waiting for.
I wish you could stick around. Well, I'd like to, Nick, but I'm out of leave. I wouldn't want you to testify at my court-martial.
I've got a phone call to make. Thanks.
I appreciate you standing up for it, Mr. Darrow.
I was just trying to figure out how you thank a man for it.
You clown. If you hadn't have fouled up, I might have died without ever seeing beautiful downtown Five Points.
The defendant will rise and face the jury. Will the foreman of the jury please hand the verdict to the clerk?
On the charge of practicing medicine without a license, the jury finds the defendant guilty. On the charge of murder in the second degree, the jury finds the defendant not guilty.
We'll have to have quiet in this courtroom.
Mr. Chapman, you have been found guilty of the charge of practicing medicine without a license. Do you have anything to say before I pass sentence?
No, sir.
Then I sentence you to serve not less than 5 years and not more than 10 years in the state penitentiary.
the sentence to begin immediately. Dr. Johnson, you were present in the courtroom when the major testified about certain paramedic programs.
Yes, Your Honor.
If the defendant were to request that you sponsor him in such a program prior to becoming your assistant to serve in this county as you would direct, would you accept him?
Yes, Your Honor, I'd be happy to accept him.
Mr. Chapman, on condition that you agree to complete a 6-month paramedic course at an accredited school of medicine and return to this community to work as an assistant to Dr. Johnson, I will suspend your sentence. Do you accept?
Yes, sir.
Sentence is suspended. The jury is excused. The case is closed.
Congratulations.